one thing to be aware of right out of the gates with Azure is that pretty much everything you do is going to have a level of encryption involved, including just interacting with the various portals in Azure. Okay, there'll be two main portals you want to remember if you're working with both Azure and Microsoft 365, and that is portal.azure.com and then portal.microsoft.com. Portal.azure.com, of course, is associated directly with just the Azure services itself, which of course Azure Active Directory is going to be linked to Microsoft 365 as well. And then portal.microsoft.com is linked directly with Microsoft 365 services. Either way, they're all using encryption. You'll notice right up here on my web browser that I've got this little lock symbol here, and if I click on connection is secure, you can see a certificate. You can see that it is using a digital certificate, transport layer security, which right now is the most powerful type of encryption for HTTPS you can have. So everything I'm doing right now is being encrypted. Okay. Now, as far as authentication goes, when you authenticate with Azure, it encrypts everything over HTTPS. So that it uses what's called a stream-based encryption or transport-based encryption. Now, on the Azure side, your actual passwords and all of that are using a type of encryption called hashing, which uses an algorithm called SHA, all right, or SHA-2, Secure Hash Algorithm. If you're not familiar with that concept of hashing, if I go to, let's just do a quick Google search here. If you do a quick Google search of, like, let's do hash calculator and pull that up real fast. Here's a funny one. Tools for noobs. Online hash calculator. So what is hashing? Here is the general algorithm that's being used nowadays for passwords. Is called SHA-256, and when you put a password in, like the word, let's say password, and you hit hash this, it generates this thing called a message digest code, and your password is stored in their database using this type of code. But the other thing that it does that's really neat is that since hackers have done this thing called rainbow tables on the internet, where they've basically taken, like every word in the dictionary and all the common passwords, and they've gone ahead and ran them through this algorithm to try to, that way if they ever come across one of these codes, they can decode it. Because the thing about hashing is you really can't reverse it. You can't take a code and go back through the SHA algorithm. It's a one-way type of encryption. So what they've done is they've taken all the words in the dictionary, and if they ever come across this code, they can reference a spreadsheet, say, oh, well, this is the word password. So what the industry has done is they use this thing called salting, where they sprinkle random numbers throughout this code that only the system knows about. And the other thing that they do is they can also move chunks around. So this right here. And so this makes it virtually impossible for any kind of a rainbow table scenario to be able to break your password. Okay. Now, granted, there are still systems out there where if somebody was able to get access to Microsoft's database or something, we'd be in trouble. They could do what's called a brute force attack, but not going to get into all that. This is the idea of hashing. Hashing is a scenario where it's a one-way type of encryption. It goes through the algorithm. It can't go back through, so you can't reverse it. But it uses an authentication protocol that can, if you know your password and your system knows the algorithm, and so does the database on the Microsoft side, the two can challenge each other on whether or not they know the correct password based on this hashing technique that's used, okay? And that's how they're going to authenticate you. This makes it very difficult for hackers, of course, to break it. In fact, if you could figure out a way to simply just break this hashing encryption, you'd be able to generate your own bitcoins, and you'd be a wealthy person, because Bitcoin technology is based on the same techniques as hashing. So blockchaining and all that stuff, if you're familiar with it. Anyway, that is the idea of hashing. And so everything we do in Azure is using a transport-based encryption. It's using the stream ciphering encryptions. You're using SHA encryptions, and the various things you work with, like your virtual machines and storage accounts and all that. It uses a BitLocker based type of encryption as well, which is a disk encryption for encrypting everything. And Azure has this thing called the Key Vaults, where it has everything encrypted. Microsoft has equipment known as hardware security modules. If you're not familiar with that, they're called HSM appliances. This is in their data center, and it is a piece of equipment that can lock down secrets like passwords and keys and things like that, and it requires multiple people working together to get access to this. So it's got like a 2-key turn. 2 people would have to unlock it at the same time to remove it from a server rack or equipment rack. Also, the authentication system works where multiple people at the Microsoft facility would have to be given access to the device to get into it. So it's there's no single person that can just get access to these keys and all that. It takes multiple people working together. Microsoft has a committee. Anytime a Microsoft person has to get access to something, they have to go through this committee, and the committee is a group of people that agree to let this person have access. That way there's multiple people in the loop. Anyway, the main thing to get across here is that everything in Azure uses encryption, including your passwords. Your passwords use hashing encryption, and so there's various things that are going to protect your sensitive information that you're dealing with and sensitive activities you're dealing with in the Azure environment as well as the Microsoft 365 environment. Hey, this is John Christopher. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I want you to know that I'm trying really hard to grow this channel, so I hope you'll give me a like and a subscribe. Also, if you'll check the description in this video, I've got a link for you that can show you how you can get access to all my different courses. I have lots of different Microsoft certification courses that'll help you pass your exam. All right, thanks a lot for watching the video, and I hope to see you again.